Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime with Liverpool taking on Watford at Anfield on Wednesday night, having been pushed back to square one and only 1 point ahead of Manchester City in the Premier League title race. We are now back to where we were back in December, and I think people have almost kind of forgotten that we've actually been in this situation before. It's almost as if people think we started the league campaign 7 points clear, and it's only now that we're up against it. We've actually spent quite a lot of the season 2 points behind Manchester City, and I don't remember people freaking out anywhere near this extent back then. Obviously now, you know, it's close to the end of the season. People are starting to feel the pressure a little bit more. Hopefully the players aren't, because I think 11 games to go. It's still a little bit early to start losing your heads, but I think fans up and down the country definitely are, or at least judging from the state of Twitter on Sunday afternoon, some people have completely lost their minds with the state of affairs with Liverpool at the moment. Personally, being 1 point ahead at this stage of the season, absolutely fantastic. The performance against Manchester United, as those of you who watched my post-match reaction video will know, less so. Not entirely impressed with that, and I think that is what's got people worried now, is not the idea of us only being 1 point ahead, but the idea of us being 1 point ahead and potentially, given the way we have been playing over the last few weeks and even to a certain extent month or so as well, certainly since the turn of the year and that defeat we suffered at the Etihad, which was obviously like the first time we dropped points in like several months or something ridiculous like that, because we'd been on an incredible run before that. But obviously since that sort of difficult run we've been on, I think people have started to worry that we simply cannot keep it up. Whereas back in December, when we were still 1 point clear for a couple of games of that month, everyone was incredibly happy because of the fact that Liverpool were playing fantastic football. Liverpool looked like they could have sustained that gap regardless of what happened with Manchester City all the way through to the end of the season. I think, obviously, like I said, there's such a long way to go, and there will be more and more twists and turns. And as we all know, Man City suffered a couple of injuries in the League Cup final as well, and the fact that they had to play the full 2-hour game plus penalties is going to do them absolutely no favours, as they have to play on Wednesday night as well. So listen, just what I'm saying is, don't lose your heads. We are back to square one. We are back to having a 1 point lead, and we can't afford any more slip-ups. But on the plus side, I think this game on Wednesday night represents a pretty good chance for our attackers to kind of get themselves going again, because like I said, we haven't really been in the best form, and it feels like this always happens after warm weather training camps. I really think, you know, I love Jurgen Klopp. I think most of the things he does as Liverpool manager, most of the decisions he makes are really good ones, but he might just want to sack off taking the players on holiday every single January and every single February, because by and large, when they get back from these training camps, they look sluggish, they look off the pace, they don't look match fit at all. And obviously that's going to happen anyway if the players don't play for 10 days, but I'm sure it's not helping matters. I mean, why not just keep them in Liverpool and make them play a couple behind closed door friendlies and something like that? Because what this Liverpool team needs more than anything at any time in the season is games. Not loads of games, not a ridiculous amount. I think it helped us towards the back end of last season with the Champions League run, because we were in amazing form and we just kept killing it week in, week out. And then it started to bite us on the bum towards the end of the season, when I think the players did start to run out of steam a little bit, and the squad did obviously get depleted through injuries and stuff like that. But I think having this midweek game will probably end up being a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it means the players are still going to be angry. It means they come into this game with enough time to recover. You know, 3 days, that should be all right. 3 days plus a couple of hours as well, because it's an afternoon game to a night game and stuff like that. So they will have had a recovery day. They will have been back in training. They will have done a little bit of tactical stuff as well. But really, most of the time, you find solutions on the pitch in games. You don't really find them in training, I don't think. So playing yet another game when the attackers aren't really firing is probably a good thing. And obviously, with it being Watford, you'd hope they're going to get a fair few chances, and I'll come on to how I think Watford are going to play a little bit later on the video, but it's not going to be like a Man United type situation where they're only going to get a few chances to snatch the game, or like with Bayern Munich, where most of the chances we created were almost by accident, just by the ball pinging around in the penalty box and suddenly falling to someone. You'd hope we'll have a little bit of time in this game almost to just practice our attacking moves and get the moves flowing again. And I hope that it ends up being like that game against Bournemouth at Anfield, where we had come off the back of a couple of bad results after doing the warm weather training camp again. And once we got out against Bournemouth, we rediscovered our mojo completely. And some of that again was I think, tactical tweaks that had happened on the training pitch. You know, we slightly changed the way we're going to play. We brought out a 4-3-3, whereas otherwise, maybe earlier on in the season, we would have gone with a 4-2-3-1 or something like that. But I think do what we did against Bournemouth, and that comes down to the fans as well. You know, it's not just about the players. The fans have got to deliver as well. I think atmosphere is going to be so important in this game because it worked against Bournemouth. The players said afterwards they felt it in the ground. They felt like there was something special brewing, and they felt like they could use that to their advantage. Obviously, you know, it's kind of, I'm not sure whether this one will be better or worse because it is a night game, and whether that means people treat it like the game against Leicester, where the atmosphere, having been in the ground in the upper main stand, was pretty poo. It was a pretty naff atmosphere, to be honest. Or we treat it like a European night where we say, okay, night game, Wednesday, midweek, let's treat it like a proper big match and actually get up for it and get behind the players. I really hope it's the latter because, again, I'm going to this game and I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to feel nerves all around me. I don't want people throwing a hissy fit because Andy Robbo's misplaced one 50-yard ball or something like that by an inch. I want people getting behind the players and saying, we believe in you, go and do it, go and get the win to help us get to this league title. So it's going to be a very interesting game. Hopefully it's going to be the game where Liverpool rediscover their mojo, because obviously after this we've got plenty more games before the international break where we are going to need to keep on picking up results and keep on that march towards the Premier League title. So team news going into the game. The player that everyone is very interested in finding out what is going on with is Roberto Firmino. He did pick up that injury at Old Trafford. He left the stadium on crutches as well. Since then we've had updates of sorts from Jurgen Klopp, where he's essentially said, I have not got a clue when the player's going to come back. Essentially, we're waiting on scans and stuff like that. I think hopefully it's not going to be too long. I mean, Klopp himself suggested that, I think he kind of said because it's Bobby, it won't be as long, basically suggesting that Roberto Firmino is this kind of superhuman Terminator-style footballer who recovers from every injury within days, which I can entirely get behind. I mean, if he is, then fab. But I think given the fact that there's such a quick turnaround for this game, I know I said that, you know, it's not the shortest break between games in the world, but because he won't have had that kind of recovery time, he probably won't have been able to engage in any tactical sessions on the training ground between now and Wednesday night. I reckon he probably has to sit this one out, and I think especially with the derby looming on Sunday, I'd rather we just gave it a little bit of a rest and then use Roberto Firmino in that game. So Firmino's probably very unlikely to play in this game regardless of how quickly he recovers from his ankle injury. Elsewhere, you've got Dejan Lovren. I mean, your guess is as good as mine on when that fella's going to be back. Hopefully, when Jurgen Klopp does his press conference, which will probably be tomorrow afternoon, we'll find out a little bit more on that and find out if he's ever going to come back for Liverpool, because we could really do with that. I imagine Joe Gomez is getting a little bit closer to fitness now, if the previous sort of prognoses and interviews that have been given are anything to go by, but certainly unlikely that he'll play this game as well. So as for how I think we're actually going to line up, I think Alisson Becker in goal. Let's not even discuss that one. It's so obvious. The centre-back pairing, I think, has to be Joel Matip and Virgil van Dijk. We haven't really got any other options there whatsoever. At left-back, I think it's going to be Andrew Robertson. And then at right-back, it's got to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. I mean, again, I love Jurgen Klopp, tends to make the right decisions. Milner at right-back over Trent at Old Trafford? Maybe not. Maybe that was a little bit of a duff call from Jurgen Klopp, especially because it seemed that the idea was we get the ball to him loads and get him to whip crosses in, and then his delivery all the way through the game was utterly dreadful. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't play Trent Alexander-Arnold for this game. And I know some of it was a fitness thing as well, the fact that he's only just come back from this kind of ankle injury, I think it was, that kept him out for a month or so. So I can kind of see the sense in that, but also I don't really see the sense in starting Milner in such an important game at Old Trafford. But anyway, if Trent was rested for that game, then there's no way he's not going to be fit for this game. So I think he starts at right back. The midfield, it's going to be a very interesting call, because I think that was one of the areas, apart from just the front three in general, that we really struggled with at Old Trafford. There just didn't seem to be any link-up play at all whatsoever. So I think, especially also with the fact we're going to have to shuffle the pack further up the pitch, we are going to have to make a few decisions in terms of how we line up in the midfield. I think Fabinho has to play. I think Gini Wijnaldum has to play. And then I think probably the third one is going to be Naby Keita. I think you go with the same setup as we went with against Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago, because it's going to be that kind of game. And I think we do go with the 4-3, partially necessitated by the options we have available with the front three without Roberto Firmino, but also because that midfield worked really well. And I think Naby Keita is the kind of player who, given how well he performed against Bayern and how it did look like we kind of missed a player of his qualities against Manchester United, I think he has to come back into the side for this game. And then the front three, I think what we do in terms of getting around the Roberto Firmino issue is we move Mohamed Salah pardon me, to the centre, and then we go with Sadio Mane out on the left and Xherdan Shaqiri out on the right, simply because, I'll be honest, Sturridge against Manchester United was a bit bad. He was pretty dreadful. He just wasn't offering anything, I think, in terms of just how it affected our press, how it affected our efforts to kind of play the football we know has worked so well for us in the past. I think Sturridge just felt like a square peg in a round hole in that game, and, you know, for the most of the second half of this season, it has kind of felt like that for him. So, I mean, if it's not Xherdan Shaqiri that comes in for Roberto Firmino, I personally would probably rather see Divock Origi, because I know I've been a critic of him in the past, and I think finishing-wise, he's still got an awful lot to prove for us. But in terms of his overall play, when he has made these few cameo appearances coming off the bench, I think he's actually looked effective. And whether that is kind of the Shaqiri effect from early on the season, where Shaqiri was just a great super sub, the way he played, the form he was in, really suited coming on for the last half hour or so, or whether it's just a sign that Divock Origi has kind of gelled into the team a little bit better and kind of worked out where his roles can be and what kind of qualities he can still offer to this side. So I wouldn't actually mind seeing Divock Origi, and then if we do play him, then it's probably him down the middle and Salah down the right. But given how much Salah struggled down the right as well against Man United, I think it makes sense to move him to the centre, play Shaqiri out on the right, and then if you have Naby Keita in midfield, you can also almost switch to a 4-2-3-1 where he plays in the hole. So taking a look at Watford then, I think they're a really, really interesting case in terms of, I can't really call how they're going to play for this game, simply because normally when it comes to playing against the big six, they do seem to have a little bit of a difficulty imposing themselves. You know, I can't really think of many games this season where they've managed to pick up results against big six sides, and that might be my memory failing me, but certainly against teams of like our quality or Tottenham's quality, they don't seem to have done that well. I think they did pick up a result against Tottenham very early on in the season, but that was a long time ago now, and I think Spurs have certainly got their act together a little bit since then, although the result against Burnley suggests different, and I'm not sure that they've really set out a template in that game that they've been able to follow since then. Certainly in terms of how they've been playing recently, they've been picking up solid results. They haven't really dropped the ball at all over the last month or so, and their last game was obviously that Friday night fixture against Cardiff, which they won 5-1. And that game sort of showed both the good and bad sides of them in a way, which seems a bonkers thing to say given that they won by 4 goals. But certainly going forward, they were absolutely fantastic. You know, they showed a lot of qualities that I think will trouble our defenders. They've got kind of a multitude of ways that they can attack. They've got Troy Deeney, who we all know about. You know, he's obviously going to cause our centre-backs problems. I think he's probably going to target Joel Matip, although, as we know, he utterly hates playing against Virgil van Dijk. So I wouldn't be surprised if we said to Joel Matip, you deal with everything else. We'll get the absolute Rolls-Royce Terminator that is Virgil van Dijk to deal with Troy Deeney. That feels a little bit sort of almost derogatory to Van Dijk to say you can only handle one player all game. But I think for Matip's sake and for everyone's sake, really, I think it makes sense to leave him on Troy Deeney and kind of mark him out the game, essentially. Because if you mark Deeney out the game, it causes problems for his partner, who is Gerard Deulofeu, who was fantastic against Cardiff. And again, he's the kind of player who is a little bit hit or miss, and it's whether Watford do have this problem against the big six where their big players just don't really show up for those kind of games and would rather show up when they can bag a hat-trick against a gang of just farmers, I guess, like Cardiff. No disrespect to them, although I suppose calling them farmers, it's hard to really say no disrespect. But anyway, Deulofeu obviously had a fantastic game. You know, he's causing all sorts of problems. Linked up with Deeney as well fantastically, which is why I think you mark one of them out the game completely and you make it so much more difficult for the other one, because I think Deulofeu will be a threat in terms of he's not just a problem for our back four to deal with. He is going to drift back and play in the hole. He's going to drift out wide, so the fullbacks have got to be aware of him. The midfielders as well. Fabinho's going to have to be really on the ball there. He can't just focus on getting forward and kind of starting attacks. He's got to think about the other end of things as well and just deal with the threat that Deulofeu poses. So they've got plenty of options going forward. Like I said, I do wonder whether maybe they do struggle against big six sides, and maybe it is a matter of simply, you know, big six teams kind of are able to implement more of a plan. And I think if we do make an effort to mark either one of Deulofeu or Deeney out the game, then I think we do kind of stifle their threat. And I think the fact that they are so good going forward at times and they've got all this talent, but they still haven't kind of got any huge scalps against big six teams since the Tottenham game does, to me, suggest that they can't really impose themselves on games that maybe in terms of the midfield and defence. The defence, obviously, I think is pretty good and 4 Forster is a fantastic goalie, but it is maybe just an issue of the midfield maybe never quite grabbing games by the scruff of the neck, and that's why I think it's so important that we get the decision right with midfield and we do play the right players, and I think that is going to be Firmino, Gini van Aldum, and the fantastic resurgence Naby Keita. So that is all for today's video. I do hope it's a Liverpool win. I'm really looking forward to being at the game as well, so I will see all of you guys on Wednesday night outside the ground after the game. Hopefully we've got another 3 points that keeps that 1 point lead, or maybe, fingers crossed, even extends it at the top of the table. Apart from that, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back on Wednesday night after we've hopefully beaten Watford. Until then, bye for now.